What's good, y'all? Have you ever wondered like how sometimes you hear something and it's just like, how do you even come up with that? Well, if it seems elusive, then you're not alone. So the truth is, though, if you have basic, minor, and major chords down, then the rest simply comes down to just adding things to it and moving things around to where it sounds like you're doing a lot more than you're actually doing. So in this video, I'll be taking one simple progression and I'll be moving it around and manipulating it to make it sound more advanced. So that way you can do the same thing with your progressions. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is inversions. So basically what an inversion is if you take a chord like this, we have the note C, E, G. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to move the notes of the chord around just to put them in a different order. So that's called an inversion. So all I'm doing is moving the bottom note up to the top, moving the bottom note again up to the top, bottom note again to the top, and that's where we're at. Okay, so for this video, I'm just gonna do a pretty common progression. So we're just gonna do C, which is the 1, F, which is the 4, A, which is the 6, and G, which is the 5. Okay, so if you play your chords like that, there's nothing wrong with it. Just a little basic. And it sounds a little blocky, right? So if you just listen to it, it sounds like I'm picking my hand up, moving it to another spot, moving it to another spot. And you could tell pretty easily I'm keeping the same shape. So with inversions, what that's going to do is it's going to make the chord transitions a little bit smoother. So now when you're doing it, you're basically going to ask yourself two questions. Okay, so if we start off with this one chord, and our goal is to get to the 4 chord, what you have to ask yourself is what notes are the same in between both chords. Okay, so that's your 1 chord. You've got C, E, G. Next chord, F, A, C. Which notes are the same? So the only one is C. Right, if we're starting here, we already have C. So now we just need to figure out what's the best way to get to F and A for our next chord. So all we're going to do is move these two up to F and A. And that's how you get to that chord. Okay, so let's do it again. So now we're going to go from our 4 chord, the F chord, to the 6 chord, which is the A chord. So we have A, C, and E. If we're starting here, which notes are the same? So we've already got A, and we've already got C. Now we just need to find the easiest way to get to an E. Right? And so if you're looking at it, it's pretty simple. Just going to move this F down to E right here. Really quick. Okay, so far we have the 1 chord, 4 chord, 6 chord. Okay? And then our last chord, we're going from this 6 chord down to the 5 chord. So as you can see, none of the notes are going to be the same. So if we're playing our 6 chord like this, we just need to move everything down. That's going to be the most efficient way to get to that chord. So just to compare the two, here's what we were doing at first. And now here's what we're doing. And yeah, and that's fine. So now that's the most efficient way to play it. Now with these inversions, that's not all you can do with them. The other thing you can do with them is you can control which direction you're going. Okay, so let's say I want to play the same progression, but I want to keep going up, right? And back down. I don't want to go lower than that C. So the other thing about inversions is you can control which direction you're going. Okay, so the next way to spice up your chords a little bit is to start extending them. So what we just did was a normal triad. Basically, if you add another skip to the chords right here, as you can see, those are called seventh chords because the note we add is 7 notes away from our root note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and so there are different types of 7 chords. As you can see, this one is a major 7, and that's just because it follows the major scale. If I go to the next scale degree, you can see that one is a minor 7. And that's because if our major scale has F sharp and C sharp, so that would be our major 7. And since we're flatting the 3rd and the 7, that makes it a minor 7. So those are going to be your main 2 types: major 7, minor 7, minor 7, major 7. Okay, and here we have a different type of 7, which is called a dominant 7. So with this one, instead of flatting the 3rd and the 7, you're only flatting the 7. And that usually goes with the 5th scale degree. So C is our 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 is typically called a dominant. And then you have minor 7. This one's going to be called a half diminished 7. And then back to 1. This half diminished 7, you're not going to worry about too much. You'll see later, it's going to kind of be an extension of the dominant 7. So the main thing to know is that you have major and minor 7ths, and the 5th scale degree is going to be dominant. That one's important. Okay, so let's play our progression and let's use these 7th chords and let's just see what happens. Okay, so as you can hear, the chords get a little bit more dense, a little bit more jazzy, you know. So as you start extending, the chords are going to become more and more dense. And let's do that with our inversions now. I'll go back up here. I'm also going to add the bass note so you have some context. So sevenths are only the beginning, right? So you could keep extending it out. Sevenths. You could extend it out to a 9, an 11, and a 13. So it all just depends on what you want to do. And so with these extra extensions, you basically just want to kind of experiment to see what sounds good, for each chord. So let's start with just nines. So you can hear that's the like the kind of density that we're looking for when we're thinking advanced chords. We got 7, 9, 3, 5. See there, I made the 9 flat. And there we go. So same progression. We're just adding in more extensions. And as you add more, like let's say I wanted to play a 13, you can take out the 5th. So the 5th, because it doesn't change the chord either way, that's one note you can leave out. So let's see. If I do that, that's a 9 and we have a 13 in here as well. Okay, so what I would do is just start with one chord, experiment and see like what would sound good with that. So maybe sharpening the 11 might be good. What if I do a flat 9 with a sharp 11, and of course this may not be what you're looking for. But that's how you experiment, and that's how you can use your ear to figure out like what you want to happen with each chord, right? So that's how, with the 5 chord, I know how that flat 9 sounds, so I can add that in whenever I want to. Okay, so that's the main way you're going to get to these really dense chords. But there are other ways, there are other tricks that we can do just to spice up the progression a little bit. So the first one is going to be what's called a secondary dominant. Right, so we have our first dominant, right, which is always the 5. And it's called that because that's the best chord to go back to 1 from. 5, 1. Okay, so, but what we can do is, for example, when we go from our 1 chord to the 4 chord, we can think like, okay, so what's the 5 of an F chord? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to be a C, right? So we can make that chord dominant. And that's the same thing that we're doing. So we're just adding in an extra chord, right? So that's going to be called a passing chord. So what if we added the secondary dominant for each chord, right? So we already know for F, it's C. Okay, our next chord is A. So what would be the dominant for A? All you have to do is count 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it would be E. So that's our E dominant chord. So let's do both. Let's hear how that sounds. It sounds really good going to that A chord, right? And then our last chord is the G chord. So what would be the dominant for a G chord? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it would be a D, right? So we have, that's our D dominant chord, and we're gonna play that going to our 5 chord. So let's just do all of them. Let's hear how that sounds. Okay, so you see, all we're doing is adding in that dominant chord as a passing chord between each one of our chords in the progression. Okay, so dominant is just one of them as well. So you can do other ones, right? You could do a diminished chord as well. So a diminished chord is going to be basically between each note of the chord, you're going to do 3 steps. So if we have C, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's going to be our C diminished chord, right? And so the way you use these is instead of going from like a 5 to 1, you're just going to go to the note right below the chord you're trying to go to. So for instance, we're starting here and our next chord is the 4 chord, the F chord. We can do a diminished E. And that's going to sound really nice going to that F chord. Okay? So let's try that with our whole progression. See how that sounds. Okay. So our next type of passing chord kind of goes in line with the dominant. We're just gonna add one more chord before our secondary dominant. So basically we're gonna do what's called a 2-5-1 progression. Right? We already know 5 is gonna be the dominant, but we're gonna add a 2 chord in front of that. And so so we're not confused, I mean the 2 of the chord we're going to, right? So if I'm starting on C, I am not talking about this dominant or this D minor as the 2. So our next chord is F. So we're going to use the 2 of F, which is G. And now remember, 2 chords are usually these minor 7 chords. So we're going to start with the minor 7 chord, go to the dominant, and then land on the chord we're trying to get to. Okay? So let's just see. Starting on C, 2-5-1 to F is G, C, F. So G minor 7, C dominant 7, to F. Okay? Now, when you're going to a minor chord, you want to think of it as the minor scale, right? So A minor is just the same as C major. So our 2 is going to be this half diminished here. So when we do our 2-5-1, we're going to go from that half diminished chord to the E dominant chord to A minor as 1. So let's do it. So 2-5-1 of F, 2-5-1 of A, 2-5-1 of G, which starts on A, and then 2-5-1 of C, which starts on D. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so our last one that we're going to do is called a tritone substitution, which sounds fancy. It sounds sounds really complicated, but really, if you want to know what tritone comes from, it's basically three. It's going to be 3 whole steps, which a whole step is 2 half steps. So that's 1 whole step. That's 2 whole steps. That's 3 whole steps, which, as you can see, is a tritone. A tritone is also halfway in between our octave. It's the exact halfway point, and you can see by itself it kind of sounds not so good, right? It sounds a little dissonant. But basically, you want to use those as passing chords. And so what you're going to do is the note that's a half step above where you're trying to get to, you're going to play that chord as a dominant. Right, so our next chord is going to be that F chord. What we're going to do is going to go a half step up to F sharp, play it as a dominant, and then land on F. Right? Okay, so you see how that sounds? So let's do that with all of our chords, and let's see what we get. B flat, half step up from A, half step up from G, C sharp, half step up from C, so to me, that sounds the best going to the major chords. It sounds okay going to the minor and the dominant, but I really like using that for major chords. So yeah, so there you have it. So that's going to be the last thing that we talk about. So basically, just experiment with all of those. Come up with a simple progression you like, and then use these tips and tricks that we learned today to expand the chords of what you're trying to play. All right, so let's just experiment. We're just gonna go for it. Hey, thanks for watching. If you made it this far in the video, you might as well like and subscribe. Um, I'm gonna be trying to be a bit more consistent with the videos. Epic the Dawn called me out, so we're gonna get to it. Again, thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, leave them down below. Really appreciate your time.